Awesome. Coming at you live today. Finding That Next Gear is my podcast. It's all about entrepreneurship for entrepreneurs. Today we have Cory Hewett, founder of Give Me Vending. Cory, thanks so much for joining.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. So we're in your studio, and this is a pretty new office space.
It's a brand new office space for us. We're down here at Rome in Trillith, town at Trillith, in a brand new podcast room. When we saw the final invoice for this thing, it was eye-popping. But there's a guy who really believes in the vision of this town. And that's
is that you? Or?
Oh, no. Wow, I wish I could write a six-figure check to make this room happen. No, that guy is actually Dan Cathy.
Okay, yes, Dan Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A.
Founder of Chick-fil-A, and this is his legacy project. The town at Trillith is his legacy project. He owns the movie studios across the road, Trillith Studios, and so he's building a whole brand new town to bring together entrepreneurs, storytellers, and makers. And so this podcast room is, I guess, one of the perks of being one of the founding members down here, and we're excited to be here.
Yeah, no, it's pretty awesome. I need to look at some real estate down here myself, as I'm in the entrepreneur game. Well, listen, thanks so much for joining the show. Really appreciate it. Of course, we want to get deep on who you are and how you got to where you are. But prior to talking about you and Give Me Vending, let's talk a little bit about your journey. Give Me is obviously not your first startup. From what I can tell, maybe it's your second, maybe it's your third. You tell us. But it looks like you maybe have exited or had a company called iCrew Mobile. And can you tell us a little bit about how you got started with that, what you did, and did you exit or leave or close the business down to start Give Me? What was kind of the situation?
I guess, you asked about how we got started, and my parents would probably tell a story of the quintessential entrepreneur story where you start with a lemonade stand. And I remember being out there literally nailing things together to start that lemonade stand. In high school, it expanded a little bit though, and bought my first vending machine. And from there, bought a couple others and started to see what it was like to manage this growing enterprise. Never made it super huge. I ended up with about 26 machines, but it was spread out enough that I needed to start to work with other people to help run the business. And that's the first time that had happened for me. If you run a lemonade stand as a middle schooler, you can handle it all by yourself. Maybe your parents have to drive you to the store, but you can set the prices, sell the product, deliver it. This was the first time that I had to pay other people to help me acquire products, service the machines. So they were touching cash. They were interfacing with the customers on behalf of my brand, my company. And that was my first time running a proper, if you will, business.
And what age was this?
Oh, that was high school age that I started really working with the vending machines.
So that's crazy. So read a little about your bio, and I was just under the impression, there's a sentence that I pulled out. I bought my first vending machine when I was in middle school, but it didn't go on to talk about how you had 26. So I didn't realize that your company actually may have started back in middle school and high school. And so these 26 machines, were they just distributed across multitude of 26 different locations? Did you have some that were in clusters? How did you actually service these machines?
Yeah, so middle school is actually a bulk vending machine. It was a 6 foot tall red spiral gumball machine. And that's how I got into vending overall. It was high school when I moved into, if you will, a proper vending machine, with buttons and a bill validator and a coin acceptor. The 26 machines were distributed across probably about 12 accounts or so. So we had the county DFAX office as my very first vending account, and I had a snack and a soda machine in it. Nice. Then we got a couple of the larger churches. We got some auto repair stores and other places like that. And those would usually have, 2 machines or so, usually a drink and a snack.
Now, how did you get these locations? Were you out there selling, or was it kind of word of mouth, or are you just the kind of little kid with a dream and everybody wanted to give you an opportunity?
Oh man, I wish. Maybe I would have had more than 26 machines. No, I was out there selling it hard. And there's a lot of really great people in the community. I'd go to them and say hey, I want to run your vending. They're like, oh man, you're, in high school, and we kind of want to make sure that this is a
legitimate operation.
Yeah, it's legit. Are you paying taxes? And most importantly, we're getting this so that we don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And so maybe there's some drama maybe with the high school. I'm like, no, definitely not. No drama. I got this figured out, or at least figured out enough to make sure that I can get Snicker bars to your employees.
Right. That's awesome. So how long did this kind of this project go on? Is that, fast forward to today, is that kind of what, we'll talk about again, Give Me and what you guys do, because it's a little bit different than owning machines, right? You handle the inventory and some of the back office software. But how did you get from, middle school to where we are today? Did you kind of put the project on hold? Did you end up kind of shutting it down and selling the machines? Like, how did you get from being essentially a vendor of vending machines to a software provider?
Yeah, in college, I was paying a former classmate to help me manage the machines. My college was up in Boston. My first college, rather, was up in Boston.
Yep.
And was paying other people to manage a business for me, realized like, hey, I could probably just sell the whole thing and make some money. And I did. So it was, if you will, my first exit. Grew a small vending route, made it profitable, sold it, made some money, and then spent it all in school.
On school or in school?
Well, on school, in school. I chose an expensive Boston business college. They billed themselves as the number one entrepreneurship college in the world.
Yeah, Babson.
Babson. Yeah. So excited to go. It's the only school I applied for. And I was like, hey, if I don't go there, I don't need to go. I'm gonna be a lifer in this entrepreneurship gig. Got up there, great campus, great people, great instructors, great everything. Except everybody there wanted to get a job. So it's like,
it kind of goes counter to the
how
whole
did I
entrepreneur
miss this?
thing.
Right? Yeah, it felt like it. Being a little bit further, a little bit more experienced, it makes sense now.
Yeah.
Great school if you know where you're going there for. I guess it was my ignorance that misled me. Everybody there wanted to participate more at the institutional level. So you could be an investment banker. You could work at like a venture capital firm. You could participate in the policies that could help entrepreneurship. And so the entrepreneurship education is useful, but not designed necessarily for like, oh, and now you're going to go start a business with it. You could.
So more like exposure to entrepreneurship.
Right.
You don't want to be the entrepreneur.
There were some there that wanted to, but I didn't have enough cash to be able to finish school with no debt. So after I burned through my cash, sold the business, burned through the cash, I decided like, hey, I can't even bankrupt out of student loan debt. So like, I want to be really careful before I get too much of this, and decided I'd actually transition to engineering at Georgia Tech. It was an in-state school, got Hope Scholarship. And the irony is that's where we ended up launching Gimme.
Got it.
So I went to engineering school, which I think a lot of people think about, like, oh, you become an engineer to get a job. Like, that's why you go to engineering school, is to get an engineering job. I went to entrepreneurship school, but I didn't want to get up a job, so I went to engineering school to learn how to be an entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
So that's where the idea for Gimme came from, is seeing some of the struggles, seeing some of the challenges that some of the other people that I'd met in that space go through, exposed that problem statement. And that is, in an all-cash business, it's difficult to keep track of product movement, inventory, and cash accountability.
So you sold your business at Babson, went down to Georgia Tech, and then you just were pondering, what your next move was, and you came back to the vending machine space, essentially.
Right.
And so uncovered a challenge that everybody's dealing with. And then, so when did you actually start kind of developing what is now Gimme? Was that at Georgia Tech? Was that after Georgia Tech? Was it kind of a passion side project? Or did you know, hey, I'm all in, I know this space well, and this is a place in which I've uncovered a problem, I can solve the problem, and I can actually be an entrepreneur again?
It exposed that original idea. While I was there, I met a guy named Evan Jarecki, who is now my business partner and definitely my best friend.
Yep.
And we realized that we got a lot of energy out of trying to connect hardware and software together. And we saw that typically left space in marketplaces,
right,
where hardware companies don't want to do software. That's their job, and vice versa. Software companies are like, hey, we don't build physical things. We wait for it to exist, we buy it, and then we interact with it. And it looked like with the vending challenge, it would be a good application for where our natural energies were. And that was, how do we talk to an old machine onto new things?
Sure.
Basically, how do you get a vending machine to talk to an iPhone? We wanted to, quote unquote, build the app for that. And there was no app for that when you ran a vending machine company to know what was going on with your whole operation. So it involved building a hardware component and a software component. That was the basis of the idea. But at the time, we had nothing. There was no hardware, no software, nothing. We just had this idea. And that's when we found out about a program called CreateX at Georgia Tech. The whole program was, how do we take our engineers and teach them what they need to know about entrepreneurship, about raising money, about building a product, about doing customer discovery, and teach them how to create a startup. So Evan and I entered that program, CreateX. We were accepted into it, and then we spent months just doing customer discovery. And that led us on this journey.
I've done that myself. It's not the most enjoyable situation, because you have this hypothesis, and then you start talking to customers, And at least in my case, my hypothesis was totally incorrect.
Better know that before you raise money and build something.
Yes, no, absolutely. No, it's a necessary thing, right? But it's not enjoyable because, you just want to create, you want to build, and you want to get to market.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the fun part, right? Like, can you please buy my product?
Right.
But before you have a product, you can't do that part yet. But we spent months working on customer discovery. It led us to talk.
Sorry to interrupt, but you're still in school at this point?
Still in school.
Okay.
Still in school. And Evan had just graduated. I was in my final semester before I graduated, and we got accepted into Creatix. We started our customer discovery process. I put my last semester on hold so that we could finish this. We were getting credit from the school, audit credit, so it didn't count towards the degree, but it meant that I got to stay a full-time student in the process.
Nice.
And I remember talking to several dozen operators who were like, man, if somebody could just create the app for that, that would be what would change my business. Like, that's really interesting, that you say that. I'm not trying to lead the witness. I'm not trying to tell them what my idea is. I'm trying to listen to what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And credit cards on vending machines were pretty new at that time, so we're asking a lot of questions about that. Maybe we should build a credit card machine for the vending machines. And they led us back to this idea that that's great. It's adding a lot of value. But at the end of the day, if they can't keep track of where their people are, when they're taking cash from their machines, and how many products they're putting back, they don't have control over their business. And that's the part that keeps them up at night. And the most powerful interview came when somebody said, hey, I'd write a blank check today if you could build a solution that basically is the app for that would allow me to talk to my vending machines wirelessly and know what's going on. And so I wrote that down, and that was the last interview because I wrote that down. Evan and I did a little huddle afterward, a little bit of a huddle after that meeting, and decided, hey, if he's willing to write a blank check, maybe there really is a business here. Maybe it's not just in our heads. Maybe there's something here. So we went back to him a couple days later and said, hey, you said you'd write a blank check. We don't have a company yet, and we don't have a product yet, but we want to do that. So was that, were you joking, or is that real? And he said, that's real. I'll write a check today. And it's a $5,000 check. He knew that the product wasn't real yet, but he said, here's a deposit for me to be your first customer. Come back with a working version of this, and we'll keep talking. Wow. So that's the day that Evan and I said, okay, we're doing this.
Unbelievable. It's funny you say that too. It's I feel like a lot of folks, when they get that feedback, you obviously had that light bulb moment, but I feel like far too many people don't necessarily have that, right? And, also too, I've heard people say, well, we'll write you a check, and I never believe them, right?
You just ask them to do it.
Yeah, no, I think it's fantastic. You actually call this person to task, which then kind of took you from, one avenue to a totally different avenue. And so you got your first check, and have you graduated college at this point? Or are you still?
I'm still one semester away.
You're still one semester away. Okay, well, so let's just go ahead.
I think that they call that a dropout at this point because that was 7 years ago.
Okay, so you haven't finished yet.
Correct.
That is awesome. That is the entrepreneurial life. I love it. So you got the $5,000 check. What did you do with that?
Well, to build the hardware was going to cost way more than $5,000. We estimated that we'd need $100,000, and that was wrong. We actually ended up needing $250,000 to really be able to finish all the hardware to commercialize the product. But it was enough to buy some component hardware to be able to, at the time Radio Shack was going out of business, so to dive in their bargain bins, buy a bunch of stuff, and start using the Georgia Tech labs to solder different things together to kind of hack together this hardware solution. Look. We bought this random Bluetooth thing, and we bought these random cables, and we plugged it into a vending machine, and it's wireless now. Ta-da! And we were able to show him, here it is. It's super ugly.
Right.
But, we're not full of shit.
Was it the size of a microwave?
It was probably bigger. Just if you took apart a microwave and all the pieces were hanging out all strung together, that's basically what it looked like.
And visually, where did this piece of hardware sit? Was it on top of the vending machine behind it?
Well, we had to leave the door open and the cables plugged in because the metal box of the vending machine was starting to interrupt some of the crude radios that we had for the Bluetooth signals. So it proved that we could do it, but it definitely was not sexy. You've got this, cords hanging out of an open vending machine. Not practical for running it in real life, but proof of concept.
Awesome. So how long did that take you to actually build?
To go from, get that proof of concept, or to go from there?
To get the POC, yeah.
Let's see. At the time, we were innovating at the Georgia Tech Library, the Clough Learning Center, the CLC. And they allowed us to use a vending machine in their basement. And we were allowed to only use it from 10 p.m. till 5 a.m. when we'd be least in the way of other students trying to study. And so we did probably 45 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. sessions testing with that machine before we got that proof of concept. Month and a half or so. Month and a half of all-nighters.
Oh man, that is definitely an entrepreneurial life. Love that. And so you got your POC. I guess you demoed it for your client.
Yes.
And then what happened? Ask for more money?
Had to.
Yeah.
Hey, if this is legit, we're really like to commercialize this, to turn these into components. We're going to have to hire a professional engineering company just for that hardware side of things to help us take our design and make it so that you could build, a bunch of these.
So at this point, you and Evan were essentially overseeing the development piece, the development component, but you outsourced.
Oh, not yet. At that point, It was just, hey, we're going to have to find, if you will, professional help to take this college project and an idea. At the time, we had finished the patent for it. We were able to prove that this design works, but we needed to go and move that to something where the components were miniaturized, that we could get our board printed correctly, that we could get it all packaged correctly, that we could get it approved by the
microwave,
right?
Basically, okay. So let's talk about the patent process, because I've thought about a patent before. I've looked into it. I've looked into the cost. I've looked into the complexity, and I mean, honestly, I'm very impressed that 2 college kids or recently graduates were able to kind of get that through. Obviously, you brought in some attorneys,
right?
But what was the patent process like?
Proving that what we had was defensibly unique and non-obvious. So the idea of just building like a Bluetooth thing for a vending machine wouldn't have passed the muster for something patentable. It's not unique enough because any reasonable person might have that idea. What made it interesting is that the only way to talk to a vending machine, and this might get maybe a little geeky or technical or something.
Bring it on.
But there's no like USB port on a vending machine where you could just like, I'm just going to like plug it in. Bam. I don't know why those guys were spending so much time on it. It speaks in a really specific way called DEX, D-E-X. And DEX as a standard doesn't include power. So if you want to get information from a vending machine, you have to bring your own power. So if you want to connect something wirelessly like Bluetooth, it also needs power to operate too, but the machine isn't providing any power for that purpose. So you have to start to get unique in how you can, if you will, almost either trick the machine into giving you power by pretending that you're something else. That starts to delve into the non-obvious component. Not anybody could just randomly plug something in and get it to work. Or you would have to use something super, super long-lasting that uses a tiny, tiny bit of power so that you could get it to last for years without needing to trick the machine that it has power, but trick the machine that you didn't leave something plugged into it and trigger it to like shut down and protect itself.
I had no idea vending machines were so complex.
Basic stuff, but at the time, a brand new data standard had come out called Bluetooth Low Energy. We were able to invent a mechanism to misuse that data standard to be able to really power efficiently communicate with the machine. So that was the basis of the patent, was misusing. And when I say misuse, I don't mean like in a nefarious way. I just mean it's supposed to operate under a certain set of ways. We changed it so it operate way differently. There was some magic in that. That's what allowed it to be patentable. So we could use this thing that didn't fit to serve a purpose that we needed.
Got it. And not to go on a tangential path here, but you've got your patents. Are you able to kind of block out all the competitors within your space?
Yeah.
Okay, well we'll circle back to that.
We ended up having to go to court over some of these things. We were also issued a couple copyrights for some of the unique code that went into enabling these hardware solutions. We did have to defend it in court later on, and the courts upheld that what we built was defensibly unique, that it wasn't something that a reasonable person could just stumble across, and we're able to demonstrate that somebody had actually stolen our code, included it in their software, hadn't even bothered to comment out some of our manual comments in the code, like, oh, Cory thinks this,
right.
Like our names are still in there type of idea. So
unbelievable.
Like try to rip off our code and include it in theirs to unlock their own stolen version of our stuff, and found it, got a judge to agree with us, got it back. So for us, that allowed us to know not only did we get issued a patent, but the courts were able to uphold that what we built was unique,
right,
and was defensible.
So don't come mess with us, right?
So don't come mess with us.
So for the layman, myself included, how does somebody reverse engineer your hardware and software? I mean, they literally have to go to the back of a vending machine, detach it, take it into a lab.
I think I would have been more flattered if that were the case. This was just good old-fashioned convince us to give it to them on the basis of creating a commercial agreement together. And then after you get all our stuff, just ghost us.
Just rip it off.
Right.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So circle back a little bit. So you've got your patent, you had your POC, and now you're in the process of trying to kind of build out a team that can help you further commercialize your proof of concept.
Right.
Yeah. So how did you go about finding a team? I mean, at this point, you had your primary investor. Were other people kind of like catching wind of what you've created? And
so no investor at that point. We did have our first customer, and revenue dollars are way better than investor dollars. You don't dilute the company. There's no obligation to like a loan. You have an obligation to repay it with interest. With an investment, you sell part of your company on the basis like you will later make revenue. Revenue's awesome.
Right.
A customer is buying something from you, and we were trying to be as upstanding as possible. The customer was aware that we were still working to build the product. So we weren't trying to, roll our electric truck down a hill and tell everyone that we had finished building it. We were saying like, we have not finished building it, but we are taking orders so that we can finish building it.
Continue feeding the machine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we got the first several built. I remember Evan and I had a big whiteboard in our office, and we called it the Deploy 42. Like, we were spending months to get 42 of these miniaturized, commercialized, installed into 42 vending machines, which is a tiny number. But
and how did you come up with the number 42?
Oh, that's the number of machines that were at our first account.
Got it. Okay, so you wanted to essentially have your software in every single one of their vending machines
in that one account.
Got it.
So and 42 just happened to be the number. So the Deploy 42 plan. So we worked really hard. It took us like another 6 months to get those 42 machines set up, get the hardware working correctly, go through all the normal learning curves, and demonstrate like, hey, now instead of just proving that it works on one machine, now we can prove that it works at the account level. So then the customer is willing to write us another larger check, but this time there are more strings attached because the dollar size is getting bigger. A $5,000 check for a $50 million business is tiny.
Right.
It's big for us. It was meaningful for us, but it was tiny for them. They're like, hey, it's an insurance policy. If they figure it out, great. If they don't, whatever. Then we got to, an order of magnitude larger than that to get the 42 machines. When we proved it worked there, that's when we were like, hey, we need a 6-figure check to be able to deploy this across your whole operation. Mm-hmm. That's when they were like, okay, these are big boy dollars. Now we need to make sure, this is locked down. So we got our paperwork in order that would demonstrate that once we could prove that we had the capacity to handle their whole business, then they would write the check for it. And that was an opportunity where, okay, now we needed to find an investor, somebody who believed in us and saw that not only could we scale with them, but we could scale to other customers. That's when we were introduced to a variety of angels around the Atlanta scene, but ultimately struck a great relationship with two early-stage Atlanta investors, John Lally and David Cummings, who ended up investing in our seed round, where we ultimately raised about $750,000 to finish out the hardware side of the business, make those first hires, and start scaling up our software as well so that we could expand to not only that first customer's whole business, but their friends as well, that customer's friends as well, and start to expand in the whole industry.
That's awesome. So a couple of questions, as you're building this 42, were you iterating with each different hardware and software that you were deploying and getting better and better, more efficient? Or had you kind of standardized what you were putting out there in the machines at this point?
Definitely the former. I wish I could say we had standardized it and it was all going great. Our first office was within the warehouse of that first customer.
Oh, amazing. That's
so
awesome. Yeah.
With these drivers that were using the unfinished version of the software, if we gave them a bad day, we'd know it ASAP, because they would walk by our office on the way to like drop off their stuff for the day.
Dirty look. Yeah.
Hey guys, can you talk? Like, oh yeah, you found that bug? Like, oh yeah, it cost me, like all this, like an extra trip, or I had to lug sodas up a flight of stairs, and then it turns out I didn't need them. Like, come on guys, get your stuff together.
Right.
So that was probably the fastest customer discovery iteration cycle we possibly could have had.
But it couldn't have worked out any better because it's trial by fire. And not only did you have somebody who was paying you, but you had a customer, and you're able to kind of work out some of the kinks within that one customer versus being, a much larger commercial deployment and running into those situations.
Invaluable.
Yeah. And so what did the software component look like at that point? Because now you've got dashboards and, it's pretty complex. But what did that look like? Was this like DOS back in, circa 85 or whatever that was? Nice,
just the opposite,
UI.
actually. We were a pretty small team even back then, and two of our full-time hires were designers, UX designers. So we were doing everything to understand what it was like in the field for the people who are actually touching the money and touching the product. Because everything that we were doing was, if you remember, it was cash accountability and tracking product flow. If you can't get that right, you can't run the business.
Sure.
So we were obsessing over it. We had GoPros strapped to a driver's chest and to his head, so we could watch where the head was pointed, where the body's pointed, where the hands are going.
Unbelievable.
And that's where we started to try to mine, to take out all the hidden insights that we could possibly have and make it work with the software better. And
so focus on the user experience, essentially.
Obsess on the user experience.
Which obviously, I mean, Apple, everybody knows who they are, but that's kind of like their mantra.
Yeah, I mean, everybody can think about Apple, but Evan and I, where we met while we were still at Georgia Tech was actually in the engineering department of Gulfstream, and they make private jets.
Right.
And so we loved hanging out with the UX designers there. And we think as consumers, UX is like pretty, it's beautiful maybe, but it's maybe valueless, or it's difficult to understand why it would be valuable. If a screen looks better than before, what does that even mean?
Totally.
If you're talking about human factors or user experience with something complex, like driving a car or flying an airplane, suddenly I think it becomes easier to see if you make a mistake, if you shift into reverse instead of drive and jam on that gas pedal and you go the wrong direction, you could run over people behind you or something. And so you don't want the drive and reverse buttons to get mixed up by the user, or they might hurt somebody, right?
Sure. Yeah.
If you're flying an airplane and there are 142 different configurations of buttons and one of them like sends fuel to the wrong engine or cuts fuel flow and the engine stops running, then the plane crashes or might crash. You don't want users to accidentally do something like that. Same thing with cache. Nobody's going to get hurt. But if you make it easy to make mistakes, then cash is going to go missing. Maybe somebody loses their job because you look at this vending drive and you're like, hey, where'd my $20 in cash go? They're like, I don't know what you're talking about. They're like, you're fired. Yeah. And maybe it was an honest mistake. So I don't want to cost somebody's career, maybe label them accidentally as thief if they're not. On the other hand, there is a lot of cash incentive to maybe slip a couple bills. So we want to make it easy to do the right thing, hard to make a mistake, especially if somebody's career, their reputation is on the line. So these UX decisions weren't just for, hey, we made their life in a way that's really hard to measure, 6% better. What does a 6% better life look like? Yeah. I don't know. But if we can make it so that mistakes are less common and it's 50% more clear to spot a thief versus not, then you can focus your attention in the right place. You can empower employees to do the right thing. Right. And you can get rid of the bad apples faster.
And ultimately, you guys are adding more value as well.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, that makes you guys relevant. And I think far too many companies, and I could be wrong, but far too many companies don't focus on the UI, the UX on the front end. It's more so around just getting a product up and running, and we'll deal with that crap later.
Right.
But I like your story. And also, too, if you can make the situation better for the drivers, then they can be your biggest advocates, which is only going to make your job easier as it pertains to selling.
Right.
So a couple more things here. So you got your two angel investors, you got your funding round, and so what are we doing now?
Now it's time to try to grow the company.
Yeah. So are you building better mousetrap? Are you investing in salespeople? Are you putting money towards marketing? What does that kind of look like?
We experimented all across the board. We're reading business books. We're reading like, hey, here's how you pay for advertising. Here's how you scale your sales team, right. Hiring SDRs, BDRs, account executives. We're trying to pull the typical SaaS
It's
playbooks.
a lot of stuff to sift through, right?
It's a lot.
It's insane. I mean, I've run the gamut myself, SDRs, advertising, and I feel like a mixture of all, is the right move, but you got to know when to pull the levers at the right time.
SEO, PR, in engineering world, the more letters that you can use, the higher your score goes. So we were like, this is great. Right. And especially being part of the portfolio companies in Atlanta, the other invested companies in Atlanta, there's a group of us. And so I'm trying to pay attention to people who have built bigger businesses faster and figure out hey, what did you do to scale and how is this going to work? And none of those approaches work for us with our product in this industry. There are maybe 150 vending operators that we're targeting in the U.S. These are national operators.
Currently.
Okay. So I remember we hired our first SDR, and in 4 days, they called all 150 of them. It's like,
now what? Yeah.
Okay. Call them again?
Right.
So there are certain things that work at scale. If you have a target audience of 50,000, 500,000, 5 million, then you hire a room full of these people. We learned that a lot of what we had to do to scale with these large LTVs or lifetime values for each customer, but long lead times and super high CACs or cost of acquiring a customer had less to do with trying to do things fast and more to do with how do we build a quality relationship.
Right.
How do we get them to trust us? How do we get them to recognize us? And that's what we started to invest our time and effort in. So instead of trying to hire roomfuls of people to make phone calls, instead we're investing a lot on our support side. So every time a customer called, we would answer like in less than 5 rings. That was our goal, less than 5 rings. We got it down to, during business hours, it was usually less than 1 ring. It was 0 rings.
Wow.
And I mean,
the give me guys are always available.
Right, at least during specified hours,
Yeah.
because if you had an issue and you needed to call us, it's because you couldn't do something that was interrupting your operation. So instead of investing in salespeople, we invested in support people and success people. And that's what we built our business on. And so that is maybe one of the differences between us and your quote-unquote typical venture-backed SaaS company.
Sure. Well, also, too, you guys are extremely niched. I mean, no offense here, but vending machines are it's not the sexiest business.
It is not the sexiest business.
But you've carved out a niche. You guys are a known entity, right? And you've got some use cases. And, I think if you can leverage that and provide a good story to the companies that you're not working with, it makes it a hell of a lot easier for you to actually get in and acquire new customers.
And nobody was going to trust us with their whole operation because we asked them to. They had to hear it from a friend. Yeah. And their friends were only going to talk about us if we actually made a difference in their operations.
Sure. And also, too, I'm sure with 150 companies, everybody knows
everybody.
Yeah, everybody. And so, that's a great story. So you basically shifted away from SDR and like guerrilla warfare, sales development, if you will,
exactly.
And focus more on kind of the customer experience, not as it pertains to the software, but picking up the phone, helping troubleshoot, ensuring that the overall experience was a pleasant one, that you solve problems quickly.
There it is. Are you looking for a job? Because that was great.
Yeah, actually, we'll see how my startup goes. So maybe I may call you in 6 months. And so, how did you leverage that to get into new accounts? I mean, have you moved from are you working on the product? Or are you focused on business development and growing relationships? Is that Evan's job? Like, how are you guys kind of splitting the workflow as it pertains to the growth of the company, which of course is going to be revenue and sales related?
So that was all several years ago. That was kind of like the launch story.
Okay.
What's happened since then, and I'll go a little bit quicker. What's happened since then is at the time we were connecting directly to the vending machines. All that data that we were capturing, we were sending back to their warehouse management suite. So then our customers started asking us, hey, when are you going to take over our warehouse management? All that great stuff you did to track cash and product in the field with our drivers, could you do that at the warehouse level? And we're like, sure, it's going to be kind of hard, but yeah, we'll figure this out. We got this. And that was about 3 years ago. So we raised a couple $1 million more. We told our customers we're going to build it. Same idea, same customer discovery process. We're not going to do this without customers who believe in us, and we don't want to do it without that first customer check. So we talked to this secret group of customers and told them like, hey, if you want this, it doesn't exist yet. You need to write a check though to pre-purchase it. That's how we'll know that this is a legit opportunity and you definitely want us to spend our time and effort to build it.
So you got the investment dollars from maybe another funding round, and then you approach your customers asking for them essentially to prepay for this future software.
Yeah, and we did one before the other. We did the customers first to prove it, right? That whole customer discovery process.
But you could use that as leverage to then go get the money because you essentially have POs.
There it is. We were able to demonstrate that there is a clear market need for this, and how do we know? Well, we can prove it. Mm-hmm. How can we prove it? Well, these people care enough that they're willing to spend today's dollars to buy a product that literally doesn't exist. They know that it doesn't exist yet, but that's how important it is for their operation. So we decided to build the whole stack of software for running a whole unattended retail business. So instead of just vending machines, these operators typically operate large kitchens, commissaries. They operate micro markets, so these small unattended convenience stores, and they operate vending machines. And so we were growing from just connecting to vending machines to operating a warehouse, scheduling, routing, reporting, accounting, exports, purchasing at the product at the aggregate level, so buying enough to run the whole operation, which was usually multi-state, plus tracking the personnel, where they were, where all the place machines were, the accounts, commissions, and tax reporting as well. So it was a huge maturity growth for the company. And
did that increase your TAM as well? Because a few moments ago you said there's 150 customers, and so now are you accessing an entire new pool of potential customers and buyers?
Much bigger TAM. It allows us to no longer just exist in the vending vertical, but the micro market vertical, the office coffee vertical. The other thing it did is it exposed that there was an opportunity in the grocery space too.
Got it.
And so we started selling our hardware like we started in vending 7 years ago. We started selling our hardware and some of our light software tools in the grocery space too. That was about 3 years ago that we started building the whole stack of software and selling our hardware solution into grocery.
So just for the folks who are listening, so what does that actually look like as it pertains to the grocery stores? Like, I mean, is this within like the dairy aisle? You know, like where does this hardware actually reside?
So the hardware exists at the back of a grocery store where people make deliveries of the food that you buy. Typically the fresh food that can't be warehoused. So like you said, dairy, produce, baked goods, beverages best served cold. Those types of products aren't warehoused first. They are delivered, and it's not until that point of delivery that you know how many are going to show up.
Interesting.
So they use the same data standard decks to communicate to the grocery store, here's how many I ultimately ended up dropping off. And the grocery store responds to confirm that amount so that that person can prove to their boss, like, yeah, I really did drop off, 100 loaves of bread to Kroger or whatever, and can get paid from that. And so that happens on that same data standard. It's running from an old computer, running in the receiving dock, and they can plug in our hardware that used to be plugged into vending machines. It can be plugged now into grocery stores too to communicate how many products were dropped off.
Now, is the approach for the grocery store side of the business still the same? I mean, have you rehired SDRs and are you refocusing on sales, or is it back to, again, ensuring that there's a phenomenal customer experience, which then will help you kind of ultimately grow your subscriber base?
So we went from 150, which felt like a really small number nationally, to like 6. We have like 6 possible customers. Not really, but it's on the order of about 10. We have about 10 possible customers in the grocery space. Because of how big the check size is in grocery, there's these major resellers of solutions to the major chains. So Kroger, for instance, wouldn't work with us directly, and our soft drink manufacturers don't work with us directly. They buy a packaged solution that includes our stuff from one of maybe 10 resellers out there. We call them VARs, value-added resellers. We've got those listed on our website, but guys like Corporate High Jump or Versatile, they buy a bunch of stuff, package it together, and sell it and support it all at once to Kroger.
Which is great for you because ultimately it's just another sales channel.
It's another sales channel. So we still don't need a room full of SDRs. We need a room full of, again, support people. Make sure that when Versatile's looking at how to bundle this into their solution, they can do things that they've never done before.
Right.
And like we said, we've got that defended patent. So we've been assertive in making sure that we're extracting the value out of that intellectual property protection. So the only thing that competes with us right now is a cable. So you can cable in to vending machines and grocery stores, or you can use our hardware and do it all wirelessly and instantly.
Unbelievable. So a few more questions here. I want to be respectful of your time. Fast forwarding from 3 years ago to today, what's the current state of GiveMe?
We've got tens of thousands of trucks on the road that are using our hardware and software, whether it's in vending, markets, or grocery, to make deliveries, to manage invoices, to get paid. And these fresh food deliveries, regardless of the channel, are happening because of the software stack that we built and the hardware stack that we built to support it. Now we're looking to the future, and what does that look like? Well, we've been working on some computer vision tools that rely a little bit on AI and machine learning to detect things like, hey, when are things sold out, and are things placed in the right spot, and are they, organized correctly and at the right price?
Right.
And so we're going to continue to invest in that area now, which for us is, for the tech team, super exciting. For our customers, it's just another game-changing level of information that they can use to make better decisions on.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear. So a couple more questions here, but let's get a little bit more tactical about you. So was there a time when you thought about hanging it up with GiveMe? Multiple times? I think any entrepreneur goes through that. I think I went through that about a month ago. It's like I had this week from hell, and literally it's like, why am I putting myself through this?
Maybe like anything else hard. 3 years ago, I became a dad. And that was super life-changing.
Oh
me.
Man, yeah, I've got two girls, 7.5, 5.5, and it's amazing what it will do to your life, and it really changes your perspective, and everything you thought was important gets just brought down one level, which is just amazing.
I totally connect with what you're saying. I've got a baby girl on the way, probably in about a week. She'll be here, so
nice.
So we're super excited about that too. In those moments, I think it forces a reevaluation: what's important, what's not, and why. Why are you doing this? And even through that, what's kept Evan and I going isn't, one day we just want to be rich or whatever. We're not doing it just to try to find the exit. What was really powerful for us was seeing how it changed how our customers did business. They were already profitable before we came around. They already had businesses before we came around, but sometimes people were stealing from them, or sometimes you'd go to a vending machine and be empty and their customers would get mad at them.
Right.
And it felt great being able to improve that experience for the person shopping at a vending machine and for our customers who believed in us. And so, yeah, there were tons of sucky moments along the way where you're like, this is terrible or stressful or overwhelming. And one of those times that stand out is that federal court case. It was over 4th of July. I had to fly away from all my friends. I'm being deposed, watching other people like have fun, watch fireworks. I'm getting grilled for like 8 hours straight in this hot room by this opposing counsel's attorney. Like, this is not fun. You know, why are we
That's
doing
also
this?
big time, though. You know what I mean? Like, that's big time.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like it, right? Like, if you go to like a really great prison, like maybe you're notorious, but you still, like the experience is still you're in prison. So for this, like, you're still being deposed by opposing counsel, and you still have to be grilled about why you deserve to keep what you spent your whole professional life building, and why that's important. And it's I don't know, it's just no fun. It's stressful. So even in those moments, it's good to be able to circle back to know, like, why am I doing this?
Totally agree.
And that's a part that has always kept us going. Is it's clear to us that we've made a difference to our customers, and that means a lot.
Yeah, I think it comes down to purpose, right? What is your purpose? And I've been in that situation as well, where it's like, again, why am I doing this? And then I think about the mission, what have I accomplished, and where I'm going, and that kind of helps the fears and the anxiety subside a little bit, and keeps you focused on the mission. A couple more questions. What do you think the number one trait of those entrepreneurs that find success is versus those that don't, right? Again, this podcast is about finding that next gear. And personally, and I'm not trying to influence you, I think it's all about perseverance, right? I think that's
resilience.
Resilience. I think that's really the difference between those that do and those that don't. But what's your take?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that resilience is a big part of it. I think that optimism, not to the sake of being naive, but to realizing, hey, there is a possibility of a better future out there, and there are things that I can do that take me there, that take our team there, that take our customers there, that take our industry there. And for us, it's been that sense of like, hey, we know why we're doing this, and we're going to stay at it until either all our customers tell us like, you're not the ones to do it anymore, or we get there. And so that's kept us going. It's that sense of optimism and resilience.
I love it. If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice prior to starting this company, what would it be? Just one.
That's impossible. Keep focused on the big stuff and don't get sidetracked by shiny objects or the little things along the way. Just keep your head up. And if the mission is, change the way that people buy things from a vending machine, stay focused on that.
I love that. I've got sometimes shiny object syndrome. And so, for me, I need to really keep myself grounded and focus on 3 things versus 30. And it's a challenge. It's a struggle.
It's a huge challenge.
I totally get it.
So the way that we work to address that in our group is every day we have a team stand up, all of us, and we go through what we call our MIT, our most important thing. So instead of asking people for a big task list, it's been our philosophy that if everybody knows what's most important for them, for the company as a whole, what's most important for the company today, and individually, what's the most important way we can contribute to that. That's just pick one thing
for the day.
For the day, and we do that for the quarter as well. But every day, 8 a.m., what's our MIT? We all share that together. The belief being that if we always focus first on the single most important thing and knock that out before the day starts, the company's moving forward on these big picture goals. And of course, the day will fill up with this, that, and the other. Sure. But we always try to move that one most important thing every day.
It's a quasi-agile approach, right?
Quasi-agile.
Just day by day.
Exactly.
So it's funny, just recently, it's about a month ago, on Mondays, every Monday at 10 a.m., I've got a calendar reminder that says, what's that one big thing this week? So I haven't done micro goals where it's, one thing, or MIT, I should say, every day, but it's one big thing this week. And that's really been very helpful to me personally. And so I think that's phenomenal. I may try to kind of up the ante a little bit and have, something I do once a day, but I love that. And that mirrors kind of what I'm trying to accomplish as well. All right, lightning round, quick answers, quick questions. Favorite aspect of being your own boss?
That's the least favorite part of being my own boss.
That's the next question.
No, I mean, the favorite part about being your own boss is having the ability to shape your own destiny.
Love it. That's awesome. Couldn't agree more. Least favorite part about being your own boss?
Lack of accountability. If you have a boss, he tells you what to do or she tells you what to do, and as long as you do it, you know you're doing a good job. If you're the boss and you say, hey, company, the most important thing is we do this, and then everybody does it and you realize that's the wrong thing.
I totally agree. So, one thing that I don't want to say struggle with, but I think about often is, am I doing the right things?
Right.
And I think that's the toughest part because I literally, to your point, accountability is one thing, but I don't have somebody providing structure, guidance, support, and what's next. And so I totally agree. What would you say is your biggest success with maybe just entrepreneurship in general, taking Gimme aside?
Watching the team. So I've been able to watch our team do some pretty amazing things as individuals and as groups. I've watched some of our team members be named 30 under 30, 40 under 40. I've watched them be named the pro to know for the whole industry. I've watched them, in some cases, get promoted quickly within my group and then get offered just unimaginably prestigious jobs at other places. And that hurts. But at the same time, it's like, wow. Watching people get hired by Porsche, and specifically because they saw the portfolio of what they've been able to do here. Things like that mean a lot.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I think, guys and gals that don't have to be the one wearing the cape, right? That it can actually take joy by seeing somebody grow is awesome. So kudos to you. Last question. What would you say your biggest failure is in your entrepreneur journey? We all have them. I feel like I fail weekly. So
probably the failure to set appropriate expectations. I mentioned that we endeavored on that really big project. At the time, we told those initial customers, hey, we're going to build this thing. We did so with hubris, too much pride. I got everybody to believe in us that we were going to be able to do it in 12, backup plan 18 months. It took us 37.
Sure.
It took us 37 months to finish it, and their operations were waiting for it. They believed in us. They believed in me, the plan, and not setting expectations correctly there and having a little bit too much pride, so hubris. That's probably my biggest failure so far.
But that's the toughest part too, though, setting expectations properly, because a lot of, it's always speculation, it's always gambling, and how do you do that appropriately? It's a challenge, and I think a lot of people could benefit from doing a better job across life, not just business.
We have a lot to learn. I have a lot to learn.
Yeah, myself included. That's why I'm doing this podcast. But Cory, where can people find your company, and where can they find you?
They can find us all online. The easiest way to find us in the vending space is vending.ai. And in the grocery space, it's dsd.ai. That's the best way to find us.
Awesome. Well, hey, Cory, really appreciate the time, sincerely. Thanks for joining. And best of luck with your continued growth plans. You've carved out a hell of a niche. Congratulations.
Thanks so much.